Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Suzanne Clark, Senior Executive Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here today. We thought, since there's nothing going on in town, it might be nice for us to put on a little program. Here at the Chamber, we're in a really unique position to convene some of the most important policymakers in the country with some of the people most interested in their work on the big issues of the day. And one of the ways that we do that is through Policy Insiders events, like the one we're having this morning. In a minute, I'll turn the podium over to our CEO, Tom Donahue, who will introduce our guest speaker. Then I'll come back up to moderate a Q&A session. We think this is a really important and far-ranging conversation we're going to have today, in part because it's centered on one of the Chamber's biggest priorities, one of the country's biggest priorities, and that is growth. And at the Chamber, we stand ready to work with the leaders in Congress and the administration to advance that single driving goal of stronger, faster economic growth. The policies we'll hear about today are crucial to achieving that, and the speaker we'll hear from is crucial to advancing that. Without further ado, the Chamber of Commerce President and CEO, Tom Donahue.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for joining us for our latest Policy Insider event. And we're honored to have Chairman Kevin Brady of the House Ways and Means Committee today with us. I can think of few people who are better equipped to do a deep dive into the big policy debates ahead of us. Chairman Brady oversees a committee with jurisdiction over three of the most timely and important events we'll face this year and next year and the year after. That's taxes, health care, and trade. Each of these issues is not only a major topic of discussion for our country and our citizens, but also a major priority for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And we look forward to working with the chairman to advance them. Now, throughout his time on the House Ways and Means Committee, he's been an advocate for promoting growth through tax reform, expanding trade and American exports, and reforming and improving our nation's healthcare system. And now, Mr. Chairman, they're going to let you do it, we hope. That makes him a great friend of the business community, but that friendship goes back even further than his years here in Congress. Chairman Brady was a Chamber of Commerce executive for 18 years. First in Rapid City, where the Chamber of Commerce there in Rapid City, South Dakota, used his skills for a while, and then in Beaumont and the South Montgomery County Chambers in Texas. And so we have a fellow that's done it, and I want to say, Mr. Chairman, welcome home. And you know, the first time he came to Washington, he came here for a chamber event. We used to run these big annual meetings, and he came and he decided he liked it, and now has been a distinguished member of the Congress. We're fortunate that the chairman brought his support and advocacy for the business community with him when he got to the Congress. He earned his stature as a highly respected and influential voice on Capitol Hill, and we're really honored to have him today as our keynote speaker at our policy event here. Now, I want to make one last point. I want you to think carefully about what he says. I want you to know he's a man that when he says he's going to do something, he's going to try real hard. And I want you to know that this is the man in the House who is going to be inundated and have the opportunity to make something happen on those three unbelievable issues. And he can't do it without your help. He'll have ours, and he needs all of yours. And we have to look at this thing in a broader sense. We have to look at it without thinking immediately, what do we get out of it? We're not going to get anything out of it if we can't work together to make it happen. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like you to come up here and tell us how we're going to do it.
Thank you very much. Tom, thanks very much for the invitation to be here today to talk about our ambitious pro-growth agenda. I'm honored actually to have been elected to Congress the same year Tom was named CEO and President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Throughout those years, you have been an outspoken and outstanding leader for the business community, being a champion during tough economic times and challenging global economic times, staying positive throughout all that. You've made a remarkable difference at this chamber. Thank you for your leadership. And I know, as a former Chamber of Commerce executive myself, I was really fortunate to be able to devote most of my adult life to helping start small businesses, creating good business climates in different regions, helping recruit new industry to our communities. I know firsthand the important role the U.S. Chamber plays in our economy and in Washington. So again, thank you for that. Today, it is exciting. Tom, as you said, after 8 years of sluggish, subpar growth and runaway Washington regulation, the American people really are eager for a pro-growth agenda, pro-growth solutions to get our economy going again. The Chamber's growth agenda, President Trump's focus on job creation in America, and the House Republicans' Better Way agenda create, as Tom stated recently in his State of the Business address, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enact major reforms that could transform the American economy from a low-growth to a high-growth economy. On the Ways and Means Committee, we're incredibly excited and prepared for this opportunity. With jurisdictions over taxes, healthcare, trade, and some of the key entitlements, the work of our committee will be front and center in President Trump's pro-growth agenda. And today I want to share with you all some of the key steps we're taking to deliver on those key priorities. On healthcare first, as many of you know, repealing the Affordable Care Act is a top priority for both President Trump and congressional Republicans. While the Affordable Care Act has helped some, no doubt, it has also inflicted tremendous harm on millions of families and patients and small businesses. Each year, the damage grows larger, more widespread, and even more difficult to repair. Health insurance premiums are skyrocketing. They're not slowing down, they are accelerating, often higher than $10,000 or more a year for individuals. And for small businesses, it can be 2 and 3 times that much, really making it a struggle for them to provide affordable coverage to their employees. Choices have disappeared along with competition. Over the last year alone, we've seen a remarkable exodus of insurers across the country, throughout regions. And along with rising costs, this significant decrease in choice is one of the top concerns of our local businesses. Jason Smith from Missouri, one of his constituents, a small business owner, wrote him in an email, "As a small business owner, I recall the days before the ACA when we would receive a 2-inch notebook that contained multiple quotes from different health insurance companies. Now our options are listed on a single legal-sized sheet of paper. In a growing number of regions, people and families would be lucky to have even a list of choices. For more than 1 million Americans, they have one choice, and that's really no choice at all." So here's the good news. Relief is on the way. On January 13th, the House passed bicameral legislation that officially sets the repeal process in motion. In the coming weeks, several committees in the House, and specifically the Ways and Means Committee, will craft a bill to repeal Obamacare and begin putting in place the careful, thoughtful, step-by-step reforms that offer Americans more choices, greater access, and higher quality, all at lower costs. While existing Affordable Care Act plans will stay in place until the transition is fully complete and the free market restored, Congress will act this year to enact these reforms. In our committee, we'll be responsible for dismantling the poorly designed subsidies, as well as repealing the damaging taxes and mandates that have driven up costs, driven down quality, and driven out competition. And from there, Ways and Means Republicans will remain focused on advancing, as I said, that very thoughtful, step-by-step legislative solutions to deliver 21st century health care system that Americans deserve. And it will be a system based on what patients and families want and need, not what Washington thinks best. And while healthcare will continue to be a major focus for our committee, you all know we're also moving aggressively toward a pro-growth tax code system. Tax reform is truly one of these once-in-a-generation opportunities. We are committed to seizing it in a very bold way. If we're serious about transforming America from a low-growth economy to a high-growth one, we have to move America away from its complex, costly, and unfair tax code. Last April, I had the honor of Tom to be here to speak to the Chamber on Tax Day about our approach on tax reform and the path forward. At that time, we were just a couple months into developing our Better Way blueprint, and that day, if you may recall, I was excited to announce we were working together to design this tax system with two big goals: to have a tax system built for growth and to leapfrog America back into the lead of the most pro-growth systems in the world for new jobs and new investment. And I said then we would enact that system in 2017. Very few predicted President Trump's election with Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate, and this would move us closer to pro-growth tax reform that at any point in the last 30 years and perhaps at any point in the next 30 years. Right now, our members and staff are hard at work turning the ideas of our tax reform blueprint into tax reform legislation that delivers the 21st century tax code our nation needs and deserves. A tax code literally designed for growth, built for the growth of jobs, of wages, and the U.S. economy. In developing our blueprint, we made a purposeful decision to consider and incorporate some of the boldest, most pro-growth policies available. These are solutions that will not only transform America's tax code, but completely reframe the tax discussion in our nation. It's time for this discussion, and we welcome it. By focusing on three crucial goals: growth, simplicity, and service, we deliver the modern competitive tax code America needs to become a global leader again. So first, when it comes to growth, we go all in with the lowest tax rates on American job creators in modern history. Businesses large and small will all see their tax burden reduced dramatically. Washington will take less, so local businesses can invest more in their workers, their community, and their future. In addition to lowering rates, we take bold action to unleash investment in America. For the first time in our nation's history, businesses of all sizes will be able to immediately write off the full cost of new capital investments. This creates a tax-free return on purchases of new software, buildings, equipment, technology, and machinery that businesses need to produce and compete at a higher level. These are also key to increased productivity that drives higher wages and higher economic growth. And for the first time in our nation's history, we will finally end the Made in America tax on U.S. exports, a completely backwards feature of our current tax code that makes it harder for U.S. businesses to compete globally and create jobs here at home. This policy, sometimes referred to as border adjustability, is very simple, but it's also very powerful. It'll be a game changer for our businesses and our economy as a whole. For decades, American companies, large and small, have been competing with one hand tied behind their backs, thanks to an unfair, outdated tax code. American jobs are being lost to foreign countries, and U.S. companies are urged to move their manufacturing, new technology, and headquarters overseas. Whole communities have been devastated as good-paying jobs continue to leave the USA. Today, Made in America products and services are at a tax advantage here in America and around the globe. That's because our foreign competitors, like China, Europe, Mexico, and Canada, all adjust their taxes at the border, adding taxes to American products, heading into their country, and take taxes off their own. And because America doesn't border adjust, we lose both here and abroad. This means today, Chinese steel is cheaper here in the U.S. than American steel. Mexican beef and autos are cheaper than American beef and auto. Foreign oil is cheaper than American oil. This tax disadvantage on Made in America products and services destroys destroys true competition. And worse, it often means the best location for a U.S. company to sell to U.S. is overseas. So why accept such an unfair and job-killing tax code? The House Republican tax reform blueprint finally ends the Made in America tax. By border adjusting our taxes like our foreign competitors do, we level the playing field. For the first time in U.S. history, foreign imports in American-made products and services will be taxed at exactly the same rate here in America. No more tax advantages for foreign products and services. No more incentives for U.S. companies to move overseas. Everything taxed at exactly the same rate in the United States. What could be more fair? More importantly, border adjusting our taxes help eliminate all tax incentives for U.S. companies to move their manufacturing, their research, their headquarters overseas. And coupled with the new lower business rates on local businesses and ending the double taxation of U.S. earnings overseas, this establishes America as a 21st century magnet for new business investment and new job growth. The GOP tax plan is already driving companies to ask themselves, how soon can we bring our suppliers back to the United States? And while it's new to America, border adjustability is used throughout the world to give our foreign competitors a big advantage over the U.S. We match them, not with a hidden value-added tax, with a simpler, smarter cash flow tax based on where our product is consumed, rather than today's business income tax based on where products are produced or profits are booked. This border-adjusted tax is stunningly simple and based on a pro-growth principle. If your product or service is consumed in the U.S., it is taxed equally. It will bear the same rate of U.S. tax regardless of where it is produced, regardless if it is developed by a foreign company or a U.S. company. And in tandem, if your product or service or intellectual property is developed here and sold abroad, your Made in America export will no longer be subject to U.S. tax. This change immediately levels the playing field with our global competitors. Many of our international companies already deal with border adjustability taxes in the more than 100 countries that currently impose them. Our design is simple. At the end of the year, businesses will add up their export sales and disregard them. They're no longer taxable. And at the same time, you'll add up your import costs and disregard them. They aren't counted as deductible expenses. Naturally, businesses, as you would imagine, are already doing these basic calculations. And in the end, eliminating the Made in America tax is a simple but powerful action that we can take that will dramatically simplify our international tax code and level the playing field for American businesses and workers. But make no mistake, there are severe consequences for America if special interests succeed in blocking this provision. Foreign products would continue their tax advantage over Made in America products, undercutting President Trump's focus on American jobs and growth. Tax rates on businesses would have to increase significantly from the proposed 15% and 20% rates, undercutting our ability to make America competitive again. But perhaps most importantly, Congress and the White House would have voluntarily left in place the damaging incentives for U.S. companies to move their jobs and their research and their headquarters overseas. Now, we cannot let that happen, and we won't. Our goal is not to simply eliminate all the tax incentives to move overseas, but to establish America as that 21st century magnet for new investment and new job creation. Understandably, some companies that import a lot of foreign products have concerns. Taxing both foreign and Made in America products at the same rate, it is a big change. We are listening to their concerns, and we welcome their feedback. We continue to invite CEOs to engage constructively on the design and the transition of this critically important provision so that imports and exports continue to play a critical role in America's economy. We want what they want, and I'm confident with the right engagement we can achieve that. And while the focus on Washington today is on the business rates. Our second goal, simplicity, is critical as well for individuals and families. We are proposing to end the maze of special interest provisions that confuse and keep rates artificially high for everyone. By taking this action, our blueprint flattens out the tax code in brackets, bring down rates for all taxpayers. And come tax day next year, we will have a tax system as we propose so fair and simple that the vast majority of Americans will be able to file their taxes using a system as straightforward as a postcard. And finally, we know that a simpler, fair tax code demands a simpler and fair tax collector. So we're proposing to bust up the IRS, to redesign it into a 21st century agency with a singular mission: customer first, service first. Instead of the unresponsive and unaccountable agency that exists today, the 21st century IRS will be streamlined and centered around three specific units: one for business, staffed with business tax experts to answer your questions accurately in a timely way; another to do the same for families, in effect, and to help families who are in small businesses and tax disputes with the IRS, the creation of, in effect, a small claims court to allow them to get their disputes heard objectively and quickly and affordably. Our committee will be working closely with President Trump to deliver these bold reforms that our nation needs, and we absolutely welcome our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to this process. We're going to consider every good idea from both sides of the aisle about how to unleash investment, job creation, and economic growth here in America. And finally, we will be asking all of you in the business community to be a partner in this crucial effort to grow our economy and improve the lives of all Americans. We need your partnership, and we greatly value your vision and expertise. And as we take the next steps on tax reform, I'm asking all of you to consider our proposal as a whole and how its provisions working together will help your companies compete and succeed here in America and throughout the world. We've already received outstanding feedback on our proposal from many of the companies and industry leaders represented in the audience today. And with your continued participation, I'm confident we can get the details right and seize this once-in-a-generation opportunity for bold growth tax reform. Let me finish with trade, because getting regulation right and getting the tax code right won't be enough to make America as prosperous as we can be. We need more customers here and around the world. So along with pro-growth tax reform, our committee is also focused on advancing a pro-growth trade agenda, one that opens up new opportunities and enforces our rights so American businesses and workers can compete and win around the world. As you know, with so much, 96% of the world's consumers located outside the United States, our economy depends upon reaching those customers. It is no longer simply enough to buy American. We have to sell American all throughout the world. And done right and strictly enforced, trade agreements can achieve that goal of new customers, new sales, new jobs for the U.S. So as President-elect Trump considers the path forward on trade, my recommendation is simple. Let's maintain what works for the American people, fix what isn't delivering results, and keep America and our businesses in these fast-growing regions fighting to win new customers and sales for our businesses and our workers. So to support lasting economic growth, it is important we have and enact and continue a very strong pro-growth trade agenda to compete and win for those customers and markets throughout the world. So we're anxious, as you can see, the Ways and Means Committee has a full plate this year. We have been working hard to deliver on these key issues. Ways and Means Republicans, we came back during the holiday recess to meet at the Library of Congress to do the work and be prepared in health care and tax reform and regulatory reform and trade. And I think only if we make these bold changes can American businesses and workers succeed, and will they reach their full potential. So thank you again for having me here, and I'll be glad to stay and answer some easy questions. Can we go in here, Sam? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
And you should feel right at home here, I think. And you've been gracious about offering to stay a bit and take some questions from the audience and from the press. And so if you have a question, please raise your hand and a microphone will come to you. Megan?
Sure. So the question is, I think border adjustability is a terrific idea. Thank you for bringing it forward. Was that the question? Or, yeah. So, look, we're having very constructive ideas or discussions with the Trump administration. They too want to go bold in tax reform. They too want to level the playing field so our American companies and workers have a chance to compete and win anywhere in the world, but especially here at home. We're working through each of the key provisions. As you'd imagine, their economic team is tackling a lot of key issues right now. I've been incredibly impressed with how deep a dive the Trump team and our new president has gone into tax reform. And so we've got a lot of work to do. I'm confident that at the end of the day, these components working together, lower rates, full and immediate business expensing, no longer taxing our U.S. companies around the world, and making sure we finally end that Made in America tax here in the U.S. Taken together, those are critical reforms to the tax code. We need them all for us to compete and win.
A question right here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. It's Lenny Glynn from Putnam Investments in Boston.
Yes, good to see you.
As you know, when the past tax reform, there were serious pressures put on retirement savings incentives. And I just wanted to ask your opinion. We view them, the savings, the workplace savings system, as not just a way to provide retirees with income in old age, but also as a central element of the capital formation machine of the U.S. economy as a whole. We did a study that the Chamber actually co-sponsored called Another Penny Saved, that argued from Oxford Economics that increasing savings could actually contribute to faster growth. So I'm hoping in the course of this tax reform, it's very critical that we actually expand and increase savings and in a creative way. Can you comment a little bit about retirement and taxes?
Yes, and we couldn't agree more with your assessment. And I think one of the most pro-growth provisions in the blueprint that isn't getting a lot of attention is this. So after we flatten out the tax code, after we lower the rates for everybody, after we protect more of the first dollars that families earn, we cut taxes in half again for savings and investment for a couple of key reasons. One, we're not a nation of savers, and we ought to be. And so we reward those savings and investment. It also turns out to be incredibly pro-growth as well, which is why, again, we're all in for growth, why every provision in our blueprint is focused on that. We also, though, don't stop there. So we're looking at ways to make saving for retirement or for education or healthcare easier. It is too complex today. I think there's 15 different provisions, savings provision on education alone. It's hard we have kids that are teenagers, we hope headed to college. It is incredibly complex. We are looking at ideas to simplify the ability to save, to increase the limit so people can save more going forward. And in the tax reform blueprint overall, we're looking carefully at the myriad of tax provisions related to savings, investment in the industries that champion that, to make sure we get that right as well. So we agree completely with the focus that you have.
Thank you.
You bet.
Congressman, I represent a company that owns over 500 gas stations, and we're very concerned about a border tax on imported oil. Would the imported oil be subject to a border tax?
It would.
It would? Because we're concerned that our customers who are price sensitive, they'll drive 10 miles to save 2 cents. we're concerned that if gasoline would spike up in price, it would have a dampening effect on the economy.
Sure. So, look, that's a valid concern. I'm convinced the more I study border adjustability and how it's been enacted in more than 100 countries, how it has been increased while corporate rates have been lowered in other countries, I'm confident that the economy and the currency adjust in a very efficient way. But we're also looking at the design of this provision and its transition to accommodate concerns like that. We know we are throwing bold changes at the business community. We don't expect these models to change on a dime. We want to accommodate those concerns, but we also know this. At the end of the day, imports and exports being taxed at the same rate, where you have true competition, consumers always win in that type of design. So we're going to continue. If you would, I would invite you to engage with this as we complete the work on the provision on border adjustability. I'm pretty confident we can find an approach that accelerates growth here in the United States and our competitiveness abroad, and also accommodates some of those concerns.
Megan, you have some questions in the back there.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Mary Berger with Washington Trade Daily. Mr. Trump has made clear that he prefers bilateral free trade agreements over multilateral. He cited that as part of the reason for his opposition to the TPP. Do you have any concerns about a wholly bilateral approach? Any concerns that it would create the old spaghetti bowl effect, where you have a lot of FTAs that don't really harmonize and would create a lot of complexity for exporters?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. The regional trade agreements that I've been involved in, I think, have been good approaches, like Central America Free Trade Agreement, mainly because you can set one standard among multiple countries, enforce them among multiple countries. I think it creates greater ability for us to access those customers more quickly and hold them accountable to their responsibilities as our trading partners. Mr. Trump's approach, his sense is that those are too complicated, that those are tougher to enforce those standards, and so clearly they want to go country by country relationships, I think, with the intention of setting very high standards and very strong enforceable agreements in those bilaterals in such a way they lead to more of that going forward, and there's more direct accountability. And so I think the good news here is that Mr. Trump and his team understand we need more customers. We have to be in these regions. We have to be in these countries. They want to move aggressively to open up these markets on a bilateral way, and so we're eager to work with them in any way that they choose to find us, give us access to more customers.
Hi, Chairman. I was wondering if you could comment on some concerns that the border adjustability might not be WTO consistent, and how you're saying that there will be transitions or exemptions, how you're creating that to be WTO consistent if it's not a VAT.
Yeah, so I'm convinced this is border or WTO consistent, knowing first that past efforts have failed because they've simply tweaked the income tax. In our proposal, we are moving away from, as I said, that income tax based on where products are produced or profits booked, to a very simple cash flow system based on where it's consumed. It is economically equivalent and trade equivalent to a value-added tax, but unlike a value-added tax, which is hidden, this one is this simpler cash flow tax. Looking at the three key tests that the WTO uses in making these determinations, I'm very confident that we meet all three. There will be, as you'd imagine, I think I've been involved in 12 to 14 free trade agreements we have in place. As you'd imagine, there will be 1,000 different opinions on whether this is WTO compliant. We have the advantage of designing this tax system to be so, and I'm confident at the end of the day we'll prevail. By the way, sort of addendum to that, I do expect China and Europe and Mexico and Canada to yell about this. They have a tax advantage built in that America voluntarily gives them. It gives their products a significant tax advantage over ours here in the United States. And it gives them a tax advantage in their own country as well. That unbalanced approach will not continue. We're dead serious about leveling the playing field, about being able to compete and win anywhere in the world, but especially here at home. And we're going to make the changes in our tax code going forward to make sure we can do that.
We have a question over here.
Mr. Chairman, Pat Raffanello,
Go ahead,
thank
Pat.
you. Hi. In your discussions with the Trump administration, do you think they see the border adjustable tax as the equivalent of his campaign promises in order to tax imports or tax exports of jobs?
So I think President Trump has hit a real nerve of the American people. They're just tired of watching their jobs in their headquarters and their manufacturing plants leave the country. And it continues to do so. He's determined to stop that. I think one of the most effective ways we can address that is through tax reform that not only levels the playing field here, Pat, but literally eliminates every tax incentive to move jobs and companies and headquarters overseas, which is what we do with the border adjustability provision, coupled with those lower rates, the expensing, and no longer taxing our earnings abroad. He also has other ideas, such as tariffs on how to address those issues, but I'm convinced doing tax reform right, being bold about it, and really leapfrogging America back into the lead pack, I think is really key to achieving what he wants to achieve.
So they gave me a microphone, so I always think that means I can ask a question here. So let me ask you this question. Tom Donahue alluded in his introduction to the help you may need, the support you may need from people in this room, and I'd like you to be able to comment on what you need from the people in this room. But some of the people in this room have said to us that in order to help or in order to argue or in order to have a healthy debate, they need to see some of the details behind these plans. And so when do you think we're going to see some of the details? What do you think the process is going to be for feedback? And what do you need from the people in this room?
Sure. So a couple things. First, we know we're laying out some bold provisions. So after we unveiled this in June, we went into listening mode and traveled the country in hundreds of town hall meetings, in 100 different organizational meetings, laying out our Built for Growth proposals and listening to that. We've continued to receive a great deal of feedback. As you'd imagine, it all became real November 9th. And so the engagement has increased dramatically, both on how will these provisions work, how do they work together. Companies are modeling the blueprint in the whole way, which is exactly how they should do it, and bringing us back that feedback. That's been increasingly helpful to us. More of that needs to be done. So the first answer to your question would be, we continue to ask industries and businesses specifically to model this blueprint and give us that feedback. We know there are concerns with bold provisions like border adjustability, but the more we learn and the more we ask about the business models, your supply chain, the currencies your dollars or your contracts are denominated in, how long it would take to make adjustments in this, concerns about currency, which while I'm confident in, others are not. And so getting that feedback, it becomes, to me, increasingly clear there are some really smart, positive ways we can address these issues going forward. Because we're on a fairly short timetable, sort of the early thought that we'd have months to lay out drafts and have great feedback and go back out again has changed for a good reason. We have a chance to do this in 2017. So I would encourage companies to engage in a whole, engage constructively, engage now with us, and I'll finish with this. In tax reform, it's natural to pocket all the major changes that are good and just focus on one that might not be for your industry or you have concerns for. If we leave tax reform simply to Washington, I predict it will fall of its own right. Unless CEOs of businesses large and small are engaged in this effort, speaking out, studying this proposal, urging, insisting Congress act now in a bold way, this will be tough to get done. And so one of my requests here today to the Chamber, because you've been so terrific in tax reform and healthcare and trade and regulation in the past, is to encourage your companies to engage in a major way, and your CEOs to personally engage in our effort to do this.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Chairman Brady.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. Thank you. And congratulations.